The steam whistle pierced the morning air as Beatrice Anderson wiped down the white tablecloths in the dining car, her fingers trembling from exhaustion after 3 consecutive shifts across the transcontinental line. It was May 1883, and the Union Pacific Railroad had become her entire world, a moving sanctuary where she served miners, merchants, and cowboys their meals while hiding from a past she could not outrun. She had boarded this train in Cheyenne 6 months ago with nothing but a borrowed dress and desperation, and the head steward had taken pity on her tear-stained face, offering her work that kept her constantly in motion between Omaha and Portland. The morning sun cut through the windows as the train rolled through the high desert of eastern Oregon, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Beatrice arranged the silverware with practiced precision, her 21 years weighing heavily on shoulders that had carried too much sorrow. Her auburn hair was pulled back severely, and her dark blue uniform hung slightly loose on her frame, evidence of meals skipped to save money for the uncertain future that awaited her. The passengers began filing in for breakfast, and Beatrice moved between tables with mechanical efficiency, taking orders and delivering plates of eggs, bacon, and fresh biscuits. She had learned to make herself invisible, to smile without meeting eyes, to exist in the spaces between people without ever truly connecting. It was safer that way. Then he walked in, and everything changed. He was tall, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of worn leather, carrying himself with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own body. His boots were dusty from travel, and his dark hair needed cutting, falling slightly over his forehead. He wore a simple shirt and vest, practical clothing that marked him as someone who worked with his hands. When he removed his hat, Beatrice glimpsed a kindness in his expression that made her chest tighten with something she had forgotten how to name. He chose a table by the window and waited patiently until she approached with her notepad. Up close, she could see he was perhaps 24 or 25, with laugh lines around his eyes that suggested an optimistic nature, despite whatever hardships the frontier had thrown his way. "Good morning, sir. What can I bring you?" she asked, her voice professionally pleasant but distant. "Coffee to start," he said, and his voice was warm, unhurried. "And I will take the breakfast special, please." She nodded and moved to fulfill his order, aware of his gaze following her across the dining car. It was not the hungry, predatory look she had learned to recognize and avoid. Instead, it felt curious, almost gentle. Still, she had built her walls for good reason, and she reinforced them with every step. When she returned with his coffee, he thanked her with genuine appreciation, as if she had done something remarkable instead of simply performing her job. She set down his breakfast minutes later and turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Excuse me, miss. This looks wonderful. You must recommend this to all your passengers." "It is what most people order, sir," she replied, her tone neutral. "I can see why." "Tell me, does this train stop in Pendleton?" "Yes, sir. We arrive this afternoon around 3 o'clock. We take on water and passengers there." "Good town, Pendleton. I am headed there myself, have a ranch just outside the city limits." He took a sip of his coffee and smiled. "Name is Zachary Morrison. Friends call me Zach." Beatrice nodded politely but did not offer her own name. She had learned that personal information was a currency she could not afford to spend freely. "Will there be anything else, sir?" "Not right now, but I am sure I will see you again." "This is excellent coffee." She moved on to her other tables, but throughout the morning she felt his presence like a warm stone in her pocket. He ate slowly, savoring each bite, looking out the window at the passing landscape with apparent contentment. When he finished, He left a generous tip and departed the dining car with a small nod in her direction. Beatrice told herself she was relieved to see him go. She told herself his politeness meant nothing. She told herself many things that proved to be lies when he returned for lunch. "Back again," he said with an easy smile as he took the same table. "I find myself getting hungry sooner than expected." "What can I bring you, sir?" she asked, maintaining her professional distance. "What do you recommend? The roast beef is popular. The chicken and dumplings are also good." "I will trust your judgment. Bring me whatever you think is best." It was an unusual request, one that forced her to make a choice, to exert some small personal preference. She found herself slightly flustered and decided on the roast beef with potatoes and green beans. When she brought it to him, he looked genuinely pleased. "Perfect choice. You have good instincts." He paused, then added, "I did not catch your name earlier." "Beatrice, sir. Beatrice Anderson. Miss Anderson. That is a lovely name, suits you." He said it simply, without the oily charm that often accompanied such compliments. "How long have you been working the railroad?" "6 months, sir." "Long days, I imagine. Moving town to town, never really settling." "It suits me well enough," she said, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. "Still, everyone needs a home eventually, roots to put down." He cut into his roast beef. "That is why I am heading back to Pendleton. Spent 3 years in Montana working cattle drives, but I bought land last fall. Time to build something permanent." Beatrice felt an unexpected pang at his words. Permanence seemed like a luxury she could never afford. "That sounds like a good plan, sir. Will there be anything else?" "Just your company if you have a moment to spare. But I can see you are busy. I will not keep you from your work." She nodded and retreated, but his words followed her. Not demanding, not entitled, just an honest expression of interest. It unsettled her more than any crude advance ever had. When dinner time arrived, Beatrice was not entirely surprised to see Zachary Morrison return to the dining car. This time, several other passengers had claimed the window seats, but he did not seem disappointed, settling instead at a table in the center of the car. "You again," she said before she could stop herself, a hint of amusement breaking through her careful facade. His face lit up with a genuine grin. "Me again. I told you I was hungry. The food here is excellent, best I have had in months." "You have been to this dining car 3 times in one day, Mr. Morrison. I suspect you might have other reasons besides the food." The words escaped before she could consider them, and she felt her cheeks warm. She had just acknowledged the attention, which was exactly what she had tried to avoid. But Zachary did not gloat or press his advantage. Instead, he looked at her with such honest appreciation that her breath caught. "You are right, Miss Anderson. I confess the food is good, but the company I am hoping for is exceptional, and I am starving for your company." The words hung in the air between them, not a line or a trick, but a simple declaration of intent. Beatrice felt something shift inside her, a crack in the armor she had worked so hard to maintain. "Mr. Morrison, I am working. I cannot simply sit and chat with passengers." "I understand. But you have to eat sometime, do you not? When is your break?" "I do not typically take formal breaks. I eat in the kitchen when things are slow." "That seems like a hard way to live." His expression grew serious. "Look, I am not trying to make trouble for you. I just think you are someone worth knowing, and I would like the chance to talk with you properly. Even 10 minutes would be a gift." Something in his sincerity pierced through her defenses. Perhaps it was exhaustion, or perhaps it was the loneliness she had been denying for months, but Beatrice found herself nodding. "After we clear from dinner service. Maybe 20 minutes in the rear seating area, but only briefly." His smile could have lit the entire train. 20 minutes. I will be there. And thank you, Miss Anderson, truly. She brought him the pot roast special and forced herself to focus on her other tables, but her mind kept drifting to the promise she had just made. It had been so long since she had spoken to anyone beyond professional pleasantries. The idea of a real conversation both terrified and thrilled her. The dinner service felt interminable, but eventually the last passengers departed, leaving dishes to be cleared and tables to be reset. Beatrice worked quickly, earning a curious glance from her fellow server, a middle-aged woman named Margaret who had been kind to her in the impersonal way of co-workers who did not pry. "You seem energetic tonight," Margaret observed. "Usually you are dragging by this hour." "Just eager to finish," Beatrice said, which was not entirely a lie, when the cleaning was complete and Margaret had retired to the staff sleeping car. Beatrice made her way to the rear seating area, a small section with cushioned benches where passengers could relax between meals. Zachary was already there, standing by the window and watching the darkening landscape roll past. The sun was setting, painting the Oregon desert in shades of purple and rose. He turned when he heard her approach, and his expression transformed with such obvious pleasure that Beatrice felt her heart stumble. "You came. I was half afraid you would change your mind." "I considered it," she admitted, settling onto one of the benches. Her body ached from the long day and sitting felt like heaven. "I am not sure this is wise." "Why not?" He sat across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Two people talking on a train seems innocent enough." "Nothing is that simple, Mr. Morrison." "Zach, please." "Mr. Morrison makes me feel like I should be wearing my father's suit and giving a speech." Despite herself, Beatrice felt a small smile tug at her lips. "Very well, Zach. Better already." He leaned back, clearly trying to appear casual and non-threatening. "So, Beatrice Anderson, tell me something real. Not the polite things you say to passengers, but something true." The question caught her off guard. She looked at him carefully, searching for manipulation or hidden agenda, but found only genuine curiosity. Something about the encroaching darkness and the steady rhythm of the train made her feel unmoored from her usual caution. "I have not had a real conversation in 6 months," she heard herself say. "Maybe longer. I have forgotten how. Then we will figure it out together." "How did you end up on this train?" It was the question she had dreaded but also somehow wanted to answer. She took a breath. "I was running away from Cheyenne, from a man who thought he owned me." Zachary's expression darkened. "Someone hurt you, not in the way you are thinking." "Not physically, but he was. Persistent. Possessive. I was working in his hotel and he decided I should be grateful for his attention. When I refused, he threatened to ruin my reputation to make sure no other establishment would hire me." She wrapped her arms around herself. "So I left in the middle of the night with nothing. A steward on this train saw me crying at the station and offered me work. I have been moving ever since." "I am sorry that happened to you. No one should have to run like that." Zach's voice was gentle but firm. "You deserve better." "I do not know what I deserve anymore. I just know I cannot go back." "You should not have to. But running forever is not much of a life either." He paused. "What were you before? Before the hotel?" "I was studying to be a teacher. My parents ran a small school in Nebraska. They both died of influenza 3 years ago and I had to sell everything to pay their debts. I went to Cheyenne thinking I could find work, start over." She laughed bitterly. "That worked out beautifully. You wanted to teach. That is a good dream. Dreams are expensive luxuries." "Maybe. Or maybe they are the only things worth paying for." Zach shifted forward slightly. "Listen, I know we just met, and I know you have no reason to trust me, but I want you to know something. What I said earlier about being starving for your company, I meant it. Not because you are pretty, though you are, but because in the 3 times I sat in that dining car today, I watched you move through that space like you were trying to disappear. and all I could think was that someone that determined to be invisible must have something extraordinary they are hiding. Tears stung Beatrice's eyes, and she blinked them back fiercely. "You do not know anything about me. Not yet. But I would like to, if you will let me." The train whistle blew, a long, mournful sound that echoed across the desert. Beatrice looked out the window at the gathering darkness and felt the weight of 6 months of loneliness pressing against her chest. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care?" "Honestly, I do not fully know, but when I saw you this morning, something just clicked into place. Like recognizing something I did not know I was looking for." He ran a hand through his hair, looking almost embarrassed. "That probably sounds foolish. It sounds impossible. The best things usually do." He met her eyes squarely. "We arrive in Pendleton tomorrow afternoon. I need to get off there and start my life, but I would very much like it if you would consider getting off with me." Beatrice's breath caught. "You are asking me to leave the train, to go with you, a stranger, to some ranch in Oregon. I am asking you to stop running, to take a chance on something permanent." He held up his hands. "I am not asking for anything inappropriate. I have a foreman at my ranch, a married couple who manage things. They have a spare room in their cabin. You could stay there while you figure out what you want. The town needs teachers. There is a school that would likely hire you in a heartbeat. This is insane. I do not know you. Then stay on the train, keep moving, keep disappearing." His voice was not cruel but honest. "Or take a risk. Spend a few days in Pendleton. See if maybe, just maybe, there is something worth staying for." Beatrice stood abruptly, her heart hammering. "I need to think. This is too much." "I understand. But Beatrice, whatever you decide, thank you for these 20 minutes. They have been the best part of my year." She fled back to the staff car, her mind spinning. It was madness. She could not just abandon her job, her income, her safety, for a man she had met that morning. It violated every rule she had made for herself. But as she lay in her narrow bunk that night, listening to the train's endless rhythm, she could not stop thinking about his words, about permanence, about dreams, about the exhausting weight of constant motion. By morning, she still had not decided. The next day passed in a blur of breakfast service, lunch preparation, and mounting anxiety. Zachary appeared for breakfast, and their eyes met across the dining car. He smiled but did not pressure her, simply ate his meal and left another generous tip. The same pattern repeated at lunch, and Beatrice felt like a thread pulled taut, ready to snap. As the afternoon sun climbed higher and the landscape began to shift toward the greener valleys of Pendleton, Beatrice found herself standing at the window of the dining car, watching the Umatilla River sparkle in the distance. Margaret appeared at her elbow. "You seem distracted today, dear." "Everything all right?" Beatrice glanced at the older woman, then made a sudden decision. "Margaret, what would you do if someone offered you a chance to stop, to step off this train and build a real life?" Margaret's eyebrows rose. "This about that handsome cowboy who cannot stop staring at you." "You noticed?" "Everyone noticed. He has been eating enough meals to feed 3 men just to be near you," Margaret chuckled. "Honestly, honey, if I were 30 years younger and he looked at me like that, I would have jumped off this train yesterday. But it is reckless, foolish." "I do not know him." "You are right. It is reckless and foolish, but so is spending your whole life hiding." Margaret's expression softened. "I have worked this train for 15 years, Beatrice. I have seen hundreds of girls come through, running from something or toward something else. The ones who stay too long, they start to fade, like they are becoming ghosts. You are already halfway there." The words hit Beatrice like cold water. "I am scared." "Of course you are. That means it matters." Margaret patted her arm. "But that cowboy seems like a good man. And even if things do not work out with him, Pendleton is a decent town. You could make a life there. Seems better than living in this metal box forever. When the train began its approach to Pendleton Station at 2:45 that afternoon, Beatrice had made her decision. Her hands shook as she changed out of her uniform and into her only other dress, a simple calico that had seen better days. She packed her few possessions into a worn carpet bag and went to find the head steward. He was surprised but understanding when she gave her notice, paying her the wages owed and wishing her luck. Margaret hugged her fiercely and pressed a small bundle into her hands. "Some bread and cheese for the road, and a little extra from my savings. Do not argue, just take it." Beatrice felt tears streaming down her face as she hugged the older woman back. "Thank you for everything. Go find your happiness, dear. You deserve it." The train pulled into Pendleton Station with a great hissing of brakes and steam. Beatrice stood on the platform between cars, her carpetbag clutched in white-knuckled hands, searching the disembarking passengers for Zachary's tall form. For one horrible moment, she thought he had changed his mind, that he had gotten off without looking for her, that she had made a terrible mistake. Then she saw him, standing on the platform below, his eyes scanning the train desperately. When he saw her, his entire face transformed. She climbed down the steps, her legs trembling, and stood before him on the dusty platform. Around them, Pendleton bustled with activity. It was a prosperous town, grown wealthy on wool and wheat, with wide streets and solid buildings that spoke of permanence. "You came," Zachary said, and his voice was full of wonder. "You actually came." "I must be insane," Beatrice replied, but she was smiling through her tears. "I left my job. I just got off a train with a stranger in a town I have never seen before. You are not insane. You are brave." He reached for her bag. "May I?" She handed it to him, and he shouldered it easily. "My wagon is just over there. The ranch is about 5 miles out, good road. We will be there before dark." They walked together through the station, and Beatrice felt like she was moving through a dream. Everything was sharp and vivid, more real than anything had been in months. The smell of dust and horses, the sound of merchants calling out their wares, the solid ground beneath her feet that did not rock and sway. Zachary's wagon was sturdy and well-maintained, pulled by 2 strong horses. He helped her up onto the bench seat with careful courtesy, then climbed up beside her. As they rolled out of town, he pointed out landmarks. "That is the Pendleton Woolen Mill, just built a few years back. They make the finest blankets in the territory. And over there is the courthouse, just finished last year. Town is growing fast. Railway brought a lot of prosperity." Beatrice listened, watching the town give way to rolling hills covered in golden grass. The air smelled of sage and distant pine forests. Despite everything, she felt something unfurling in her chest, something that might have been hope. "Tell me about your ranch," she said. Zachary's face lit up. "It is not much yet, just 640 acres. I have about 200 head of cattle, room to grow the herd. Good water from the creek, decent grazing. The house is small, just 2 rooms right now, but I am planning to build an addition next year. Tom and Sarah Fletcher, my foreman and his wife, they have been managing things while I was in Montana finishing up my last contract. Good people, you will like them. And they truly have space for me. Absolutely. Sarah mentioned last time I was there that their cabin feels too big with just the 2 of them. She has been wanting someone to talk to besides Tom and the cattle." He glanced at her. "But Beatrice, I want to be clear about something. I am not expecting anything from you. You will have your own space, your own room. No obligations. I just want the chance to know you properly. If nothing comes of it, at least you will have a fresh start in a good town." "Why are you being so kind to me?" He was quiet for a moment, the reins loose in his capable hands. "My mother died when I was 15. Influenza, like your parents. My father remarried within 6 months to a woman who made it clear I was not welcome. I spent 4 years working ranches, sleeping in bunkhouses, never really having a home. I know what it feels like to be adrift. When I finally saved enough to buy my own land, I swore I would build a place where people felt welcome, safe. So I guess I am being kind to you because I remember what it felt like when someone showed me kindness, and it saved my life. Beatrice felt her throat tighten with emotion. What happened? Who helped you? A ranch owner named Frank Morrison. No relation, but he let me use his last name anyway when my father disowned me. Taught me everything about cattle, about managing land, about being a decent man. He died 2 years ago, left me enough money to make the down payment on my property. I am named after him, actually. My birth name was Zebediah, which I always hated. Frank started calling me Zachary, said it suited me better. It stuck. He sounds like a good man, the best. I am trying to live up to his example. Zachary smiled. Though so far I am mostly just trying not to let my cattle wander into the neighbors' wheat fields. Beatrice laughed, and it felt strange and wonderful. When had she last laughed? The ranch appeared as they crested a hill, and Beatrice caught her breath. It was beautiful in its simplicity. A small wooden house nestled in a valley with a creek running silver beside it. A barn, corrals, a few outbuildings. Cattle grazed on the hillsides, and the evening sun painted everything in shades of amber and gold. "Home," Zachary said simply, and the pride in his voice was evident. As they approached, a couple emerged from a cabin set slightly apart from the main house. The man was stocky and weathered, perhaps 40, with kind eyes. The woman was younger, maybe 30, with laugh lines and capable hands. "Zach," the man called, "we were not expecting you until tomorrow." "Caught an earlier train," Zachary replied, pulling the wagon to a stop. "Tom, Sarah, I want you to meet Miss Beatrice Anderson. She is going to be staying with you for a while, if that is still all right." Sarah's face brightened immediately. "Of course. Oh, how wonderful." "Come down, dear. You must be exhausted from traveling." The next hour passed in a blur of introductions, of being shown to a small but clean room in the Fletcher's cabin, of washing up and changing into a fresh dress that Sarah lent her. The older woman chattered cheerfully, asking questions without being intrusive, making Beatrice feel immediately welcome. Dinner was a communal affair at a large table outside between the two buildings. Tom had caught fish from the creek, and Sarah had made bread and roasted vegetables from their garden. As the four of them ate under the emerging stars, Beatrice felt something inside her begin to unknot. "So, Miss Anderson, Zach tells us you were working the railroad," Tom said. "That must have been quite an experience." "It was educational," Beatrice replied diplomatically, "but I am glad to be on solid ground again." "What made you decide to jump off in Pendleton?" Sarah asked, then immediately looked embarrassed. "I am sorry, that is too personal." "It is all right," Beatrice said, surprised to find she meant it. She glanced at Zachary, who was watching her with quiet attention. "Someone convinced me that running forever was not much of a life, that maybe it was worth taking a risk on something permanent." "That someone sounds wise," Tom said with a grin, elbowing Zachary. "Almost as wise as the young fool who bought a ranch he had only seen once before putting money down." "It was a good decision," Zachary protested. "The land is perfect." "The land is full of rocks and the creek floods every spring, but other than that, sure, perfect." Tom's voice was affectionate despite his words. "But I am glad you are here, boss. Place is not the same without you." As the evening deepened, Sarah and Tom excused themselves to turn in early, leaving Beatrice and Zachary sitting at the table under a canopy of stars so bright it took Beatrice's breath away. "I have never seen stars like this," she whispered. On the train, we were always moving, and in towns there are too many lights. One of the benefits of the middle of nowhere, Zachary said. Wait until winter. They are even brighter then. Winter. The word implied a future, a staying. Beatrice felt a flutter of anxiety mixed with something else, something warmer. Zachary, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest, always. What do you want from me, really? Not the polite version, but the truth. He turned to face her fully, his expression serious in the starlight. The truth is, I do not entirely know. When I saw you on that train, something in me just recognized something in you, like calling to like. I have been alone for a long time, Beatrice. I have built this ranch and it is good, but it is empty. I want to share it with someone. I want a partner, a companion, eventually a wife and family. I want what my parents should have had, what Frank Morrison talked about when he remembered his late wife. I want permanence and love and someone to build a life with. He paused, then continued. But I know that is a lot to put on someone I just met. So I guess what I want from you right now is just a chance. A chance to show you who I am, to learn who you are. A chance for this thing between us, whatever it is, to either grow into something real or fade into friendship. No pressure, no demands, just possibility. Beatrice felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I do not know if I am capable of that anymore, of trusting, of opening up. The last 6 months have taught me to keep everyone at arm's length. I know. And I am not asking you to change overnight. I am just asking you to try, to stay for a while, to let yourself rest, to see what happens when you are not constantly running. He reached across the table slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently took her hand. I think you are stronger than you believe, Beatrice Anderson. I think you have been surviving for so long that you have forgotten how to live. I would like to help you remember. His hand was warm and calloused, solid and real. Beatrice looked down at their joined fingers and felt something break open inside her, releasing all the fear and loneliness she had been holding at bay. I am terrified, she whispered. Me too, he admitted. But that is how you know it matters. They sat like that under the stars, hands clasped across the table, until Beatrice's exhaustion caught up with her, and she nearly fell asleep sitting upright. Zachary walked her to the Fletcher's cabin, said a soft good night at the door, and headed back to his own small house. Beatrice lay in the narrow bed in her borrowed room and listened to the sounds of the ranch settling for the night. Cattle lowing softly in the distance, the creek murmuring its endless song, the wind sighing through the grass. It was so different from the constant clatter and motion of the train that she almost could not sleep. But when she finally did, she slept more deeply than she had in months. The next weeks fell into a rhythm that both startled and comforted Beatrice. She woke with the sun and helped Sarah with breakfast and household tasks. In return, Sarah taught her practical skills: how to bake bread that rose properly, how to manage a vegetable garden, how to preserve food for the winter. Tom showed her the basics of ranch life, introducing her to the cattle and horses, teaching her to ride a gentle mare named Daisy. And Zachary courted her with a patience that humbled her. He came to breakfast at the Fletcher's cabin each morning, sharing plans for the day and stories about the cattle or the land. He invited her to ride with him around the property, pointing out the boundaries and the best views, his pride in his ranch evident in every word. He brought her wildflowers and fresh fish from the creek and books he borrowed from neighbors, learning her tastes and preferences with quiet attention. But he never pushed, never demanded more than she was ready to give. If she grew quiet or withdrawn, he gave her space. If she wanted to talk, he listened with full attention. He was building trust the way a master craftsman built furniture, carefully, precisely, with an eye toward lasting strength. One morning, about 3 weeks after her arrival, Beatrice rode into town with Sarah to purchase supplies. Pendleton was bustling, and Sarah seemed to know everyone, introducing Beatrice to merchants and neighbors with warm enthusiasm. "Have you thought about what you want to do, dear?" Sarah asked as they loaded flour and sugar into the wagon. "I mean for work, for the future." "I have been thinking about the school," Beatrice admitted. "Zachary mentioned they might need a teacher." "Oh, they absolutely do. Miss Henderson retired at the end of last term and the school board has been desperate. You should speak to Reverend Phillips. He is on the board and always looking for qualified candidates." Before Beatrice could protest, Sarah was leading her down the street to the white clapboard church at the center of town. Reverend Phillips was a kindly man in his 50s who listened to Beatrice's background with growing excitement. "My dear, you would be an answer to prayer. We have 26 children who need education, and we have been struggling to find someone suitable. Would you be willing to start in September? That gives you a few months to settle in and prepare." Beatrice felt a rush of excitement. "I would love that, truly. Teaching was always my dream." "Wonderful. The salary is not extravagant, but we provide housing as part of the compensation. There is a small cottage behind the school that comes with the position." As they walked back to the wagon, Beatrice felt lighter than she had in years. A job, a purpose, a place in the community. It was more than she had dared to hope for. When they returned to the ranch that evening, Zachary was mending fence near the barn. Beatrice walked over to him, unable to contain her news. "I have a job," she said, and her voice was bright with wonder. "Teaching at the school starting in September." Zachary's face broke into a wide grin. "Beatrice, that is incredible. See, I told you Pendleton needed you. They are giving me the teacher's cottage. I will have my own place." She paused, suddenly shy. "I wanted to thank you for bringing me here, for giving me this chance. I cannot believe how much my life has changed in 3 weeks. "You did this yourself," he said firmly. "I just provided the opportunity. You are the one who was brave enough to take it." They stood in the golden evening light, and Beatrice realized she was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy, in a way she had not been since before her parents died. And more than that, she realized that much of that happiness was tied to the man standing before her, covered in dust and smiling at her like she had just given him a gift. "Zachary," she said softly, "I think I am ready to stop being afraid." His breath caught. "What does that mean?" "It means I would like to properly spend time with you, not as a guest at your ranch, but as someone who is interested in you, in who you are and what you want and what we might build together." She stepped closer. "It means I am starving for your company too." The words were an echo of what he had said on the train, and his eyes widened with recognition and joy. "Do you mean that?" "I think I do. I am still scared and I still have walls and I am going to need time and patience. But yes, I want to try, if you are still interested." Instead of answering with words, Zachary stepped forward and cupped her face gently in his rough hands. "Beatrice Anderson, I have been interested since the moment I saw you wiping down tables while trying to disappear. I am going to be interested for the rest of my life if you will let me." "That is a long time," she whispered. "Not nearly long enough," he replied, and then he kissed her. It was soft and sweet, a first kiss full of promise and possibility. Beatrice felt her remaining walls crumble as she leaned into him, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "So," Zachary said, his voice slightly unsteady, "does this mean you are officially courting me?" "I think it means we are courting each other," Beatrice replied. "Is that acceptable?" "More than acceptable. It is perfect." They walked back to the house hand in hand, and when Sarah saw them through the window, she smiled so brightly that Tom came to see what had caused such joy. By the time they all sat down to dinner, the news was shared, and the Fletchers toasted the new couple with mugs of fresh cider. The summer passed in a haze of sunshine and growing love. Beatrice spent her days preparing for her teaching position, riding across the ranch with Zachary, and learning the rhythms of frontier life. They talked endlessly, sharing their pasts and their dreams, discovering the ways they fit together and the places they differed. They laughed more than Beatrice had thought possible, and they stole kisses in the barn and by the creek when they thought no one was watching. Tom and Sarah watched with amused approval, occasionally teasing but always supportive. The ranch prospered under Zachary's care, and he began making plans for expansion, for the addition to the house he had mentioned that first day. He drew sketches in the evening, showing Beatrice where he imagined additional rooms, a larger kitchen, a front porch. "Assuming you might want to live here someday," he said casually, but she could hear the hope underneath. "I might," she replied, equally casual. "Someday." But they both knew someday was approaching faster than either had expected. In late August, just before school was set to start, Zachary asked Beatrice to ride out with him to the farthest corner of his property. They packed a lunch and set out early, riding through tall grass that rippled like water in the wind. He led her to a spot on a hill where the view stretched for miles in every direction. "I come here when I need to think," he said, helping her down from her horse. "Seems like the top of the world." They spread a blanket and ate the sandwiches Sarah had packed, watching clouds drift across an endless sky. When they finished, Zachary turned to her with an expression that was both nervous and determined. "Beatrice, I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, even if it is not what I want to hear." Her heart began to pound. "All right. These last few months with you have been the happiest of my life. Every day I wake up grateful that you took a chance on me on this place. I cannot imagine my life now without you in it." He took her hands. "I know it has not been long. I know we agreed to take things slowly, but I am 25 years old, and I have never been more certain of anything." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. This was Frank Morrison's mother's ring. He left it to me along with everything else, told me to give it to someone worth building a life with. "Beatrice Anderson, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my days earning your trust and your love? Will you build this ranch and this life with me?" Beatrice felt tears streaming down her face, but for the first time in so long they were tears of joy. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Zachary Morrison, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and they were both laughing and crying and holding each other on top of the world. They were married in early September in the little white church in Pendleton, with half the town in attendance. Beatrice wore a simple cream-colored dress that Sarah had helped her sew, with wildflowers in her hair. Zachary wore his best suit and could not stop smiling. Tom stood as his best man, and Sarah cried through the entire ceremony. Reverend Phillips performed the service with great joy, speaking about the providence that had brought a teacher to their town and a wife to one of their finest young men. When Zachary kissed his bride, the church erupted in applause. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up outside and food contributed by neighbors. There was dancing and music, laughter and celebration. As the sun set and lanterns were lit, Beatrice found herself standing with her new husband, watching their friends and neighbors enjoy the party they had thrown. "Happy?" Zachary asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Deliriously," she replied, leaning back against him. "I cannot believe this is my life now. Believe it. You are Beatrice Morrison now, wife of a stubborn rancher and teacher to a bunch of wild frontier children. This is your life." I love the sound of that. Beatrice Morrison. She turned in his arms. I love you, Zachary. I think I have since that first day on the train, but I was too scared to admit it. I love you too. More than I have words for. He kissed her softly. Ready to start our life. I have been ready since you told me you were starving for my company. They stayed at the party until the last guest departed, then walked together to the house that was now truly theirs. Zachary carried her over the threshold, and they spent their first night as husband and wife in the small bedroom that would soon be expanded into something bigger, grander, a home for the family they both wanted. Beatrice started teaching the following week, and she loved it with a passion that surprised even her. The children were eager and bright, hungry for knowledge. She taught reading and mathematics, history and geography, pouring all her creativity and care into lessons that made learning come alive. The school board was thrilled with her performance, and parents began stopping by to thank her for the difference she was making. In the evenings, she would ride home to the ranch where Zachary would be waiting, always eager to hear about her day. They would share dinner with Tom and Sarah, then retreat to their house to talk and dream and hold each other as the stars came out. The first winter was hard, with deep snows that sometimes kept Beatrice from getting to school and forced Zachary to work long hours ensuring the cattle survived. But they weathered it together, growing closer through the challenges. On the worst days, when the wind howled and the cold seemed endless, they would sit by the fire and Zachary would remind Beatrice of that first day on the train. I knew right then, he would say. I knew you were worth every risk, every effort. How could you possibly have known? She would ask. Because you were surviving. Against everything, you were still moving forward. That kind of strength, that kind of determination, that is what builds a life out here. I just wanted to be part of it. Spring came with new calves and the expansion of the house. Zachary hired carpenters from town, and soon their small two-room dwelling had grown into a proper home with a large kitchen, a sitting room, 2 additional bedrooms, and the porch Zachary had sketched all those months ago. On their first anniversary, Beatrice stood on that new porch and looked out at the land that had become hers. The school year had just ended, and she had the summer to rest and prepare for the next term. But more importantly, she had news to share with her husband. Zachary came in from the fields hot and dusty, grinning when he saw her waiting. What is my beautiful wife doing standing out here in the heat, waiting for you? I have something to tell you. She took his hands, noting they were shaking slightly. Zachary, I saw the doctor in town yesterday. His face went pale. Are you sick? Is something wrong? No, nothing wrong. Everything is wonderfully right. She placed his hand on her still flat stomach. We are going to have a baby. In February, the doctor thinks. For a long moment, Zachary just stared at her, his hand warm against her middle. Then his face transformed with such pure joy that Beatrice started crying again. A baby. We are having a baby. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing. Beatrice, this is incredible. This is everything. You are happy then. Happy does not even begin to cover it. I am ecstatic. I am terrified. I am grateful beyond words. He set her down gently, suddenly careful. Are you happy? Is this what you want? More than anything. I want to build a family with you, Zachary. I want children and a life and all the beautiful, ordinary things I thought I had lost forever. She cupped his face. You gave me back my dreams. Now we get to make new ones together. The pregnancy was relatively easy, and Beatrice continued teaching until December when her condition made travel difficult. The town threw her a party, and she was showered with gifts and well wishes. Sarah moved into one of the new bedrooms to help as the due date approached, and Zachary became increasingly protective, fretting over every little thing until Beatrice laughingly told him to stop hovering. On a cold February night in 1885, with snow falling softly outside and Sarah and the doctor in attendance, Beatrice gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Frank Morrison after the man who had given Zachary his chance, and when Beatrice placed the tiny bundle in her husband's arms, she saw tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Zachary whispered. "You are perfect. Our life is perfect." "Not perfect," Beatrice corrected gently. "But real and ours and full of love. That is better than perfect." Frank was followed 2 years later by a daughter they named Rose, and then 3 years after that by another son they called James. The house expanded again, and the ranch grew prosperous. Zachary's careful management and hard work paid off, and they became one of the more successful cattle operations in the region. Beatrice continued teaching, taking time off for each baby, but always returning to the classroom that had become her second home. She watched her students grow and learn, sending many of them off to higher education or successful careers. Several former students would later credit her with changing their lives, with opening doors they had not known existed. Tom and Sarah remained on the ranch, becoming beloved honorary grandparents to the Morrison children. Tom taught young Frank to rope and ride, while Sarah showed Rose how to bake and garden. The connection between the two families was woven through years of shared meals, celebrations, and the everyday intimacy of life lived in close quarters. On their 10th anniversary, Zachary took Beatrice back to that hilltop where he had proposed. The children were with Sarah and Tom, giving them a rare afternoon alone. They spread a blanket and lay side by side, watching clouds drift across a sky as blue as hope. "You remember that first day?" Zachary asked. "When you were wiping down tables and I walked into that dining car?" "I remember thinking you looked kind, and dangerous because kindness was dangerous to someone as guarded as I was." Beatrice rolled to face him. "I almost did not get off the train. I almost kept running." "I am so grateful you did not. I am so grateful for every choice that brought us here." "Me too. Even the hard parts, the painful parts. They led me to you." She touched his face, seeing the silver threading through his dark hair, the deeper lines around his eyes. "I love you more now than I did when we married. I did not know that was possible." "Every day with you is a gift," he said simply. "Every single day." They made love there on the hilltop under the vast sky, then rode home slowly, hand in hand, to the life they had built together. The years continued to pass, bringing challenges and triumphs in equal measure. There were droughts that tested the ranch, illness that frightened them, losses that grieved them. But through it all, Beatrice and Zachary faced everything side by side, their partnership only growing stronger with time. Frank grew into a serious, thoughtful young man who loved the ranch and intended to expand it. Rose inherited her mother's passion for teaching and her father's steady kindness, becoming a teacher herself in the expanded Pendleton school system. James was the wild one, the dreamer, talking of seeing the world beyond Oregon before settling down. When Beatrice turned 40, the town held a celebration honoring her 20 years of teaching. Over 200 former students attended, bringing their own children to meet the teacher who had shaped their lives. As Beatrice stood in the packed church hall, surrounded by the evidence of a life well lived, she thought back to that terrified girl on the train, convinced she had nothing left to lose. That night, lying in bed with Zachary, she told him about her thoughts. "I was so certain my life was over, that I would just keep running until I ran out of places to hide. Instead, you found a home, built a family, changed hundreds of lives." Zachary pulled her close. "You were never running away, Beatrice. You were running toward this, toward us. You really believe that?" "With everything in me. We were always meant to find each other, Maybe not on that specific train or in that specific moment, but somewhere, somehow. You were mine from the beginning. I just had to convince you to stop long enough to see it." As she drifted off to sleep, safe in her husband's arms in the house they had built on the land they loved, Beatrice sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. For trains and chances taken. For cowboys who ordered every meal just to see a scared girl smile. For the courage to stop running and the grace to start living. The ranch continued to thrive into the new century. Frank married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property, and together they modernized operations, bringing in new breeding stock and implementing innovative grazing techniques. Rose married a teacher from Portland and settled in Pendleton, teaching alongside her mother until Beatrice finally retired at 55. James, true to his restless nature, traveled extensively before returning home at 28 with a wife from California and stories that kept the family entertained for months. He built a house on the far section of the Morrison property and started his own smaller operation, raising horses instead of cattle. Zachary and Beatrice became grandparents 8 times over, their house constantly filled with the noise and chaos of visiting grandchildren. They sat on their porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over land that had been in their family for decades, marveling at how full their lives had become. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not gotten off that train? Zachary asked one evening when they were in their 60s, his hair white now but his eyes still bright with love when he looked at her. "Sometimes," Beatrice admitted. "But then I look at all of this, at our children and grandchildren, at the life we built, and I cannot imagine any other path. This was always where I was meant to be. You were always who I was meant to love. I knew it the moment I saw you," he said, as he had said hundreds of times before. "I was starving for your company." "And I am still here," she replied, taking his hand, "still filling that hunger. Still grateful you were brave enough to keep coming back to that dining car. Best decision I ever made, ordering all those meals. Best decision I ever made was finally serving you something more than just food." They laughed together, the sound carrying across the ranch they had built from courage and hope, and a chance encounter on a train traveling through the Oregon desert. When Beatrice was 72, she fell ill with pneumonia. The doctors did what they could, but her lungs had never fully recovered from the strain of those hard early years. She declined rapidly, and the family gathered at the ranch house, filling every room with love and memory. On her last day, Zachary sat beside her bed, holding her hand as he had held it through 50 years of joy and sorrow. Their children stood at the foot of the bed, their faces wet with tears. Grandchildren waited in the other rooms, understanding that something profound was ending. "I am not afraid," Beatrice whispered, her voice barely audible. "I have had such a beautiful life, so much more than I ever dreamed possible." "You gave me everything," Zachary said, his voice breaking. "You took a chance on a stranger and you gave me everything." "You saved me," she corrected. "You saw me when I was trying to disappear and you refused to let me fade away. You loved me back to life." "I will love you until my last breath and beyond," he promised. "I know. I have always known." She smiled, that same smile he had fallen in love with so many years ago. "Thank you for ordering every meal. Thank you for being starving for my company. Thank you for making me believe in permanence again. Thank you for getting off the train." She closed her eyes, still smiling, still holding his hand. And when she took her last breath, she was surrounded by the family they had created and the love that had defined their years together. Zachary lived 3 more years, cared for by his children and sustained by memories of the woman who had changed his world. He spent his days on the porch he had loved, watching the land they had tended together, talking to her as if she was still beside him. because in all the ways that mattered, she was. When he finally joined her, they buried him beside her in the cemetery on the hill overlooking the ranch. The gravestone was simple: Zachary and Beatrice Morrison. Two souls who found each other on a train and built a legacy of love. The ranch remained in the family for generations, a testament to what could be built when two people were brave enough to take a chance. And in Pendleton, in the school that still bore Beatrice's name after extensive renovations, students learned about the teacher who had come to their town on faith and stayed because of love. The story was told and retold, passed down through the family like a precious heirloom. How a cowboy saw a woman working the train dining car and knew she was meant to be his. How he ordered every meal just to be near her, until he finally found the courage to speak his heart. How he told her he was starving for her company, and how that simple, honest declaration changed both their lives forever. It became a family legend, a reminder that the best things in life require courage and faith and a willingness to step off the safe path into the unknown. That permanence is built one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of love at a time. That sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a single word: yes. And in the hearts of everyone who knew their story, Zachary and Beatrice Morrison lived on, forever young, forever in love, forever grateful for the train ride that brought them together and the courage that kept them there. Their love story became the foundation upon which generations built their own dreams, proof that even in the harsh frontier of the Wild West, tenderness could triumph, and two wounded souls could find healing in each other's arms. The ranch still stands today, though much has changed. The original house has been preserved as a family museum, filled with photographs and artifacts from Zachary and Beatrice's life together. Visitors can see the dining car menu that Zachary kept as a memento, with pencil marks noting each meal he ordered that first day. They can read letters exchanged during brief separations, full of longing and devotion. They can see the ring that fit Beatrice's finger perfectly, now displayed in a velvet case alongside Zachary's pocket watch. But more than the physical objects, what endures is the spirit of what they created. A place where people felt welcome, a love that weathered every storm, a partnership built on mutual respect and unwavering commitment. A family tree with branches reaching across the country, all tracing their roots back to a train dining car in 1883, and a cowboy brave enough to declare his hunger for something more than food. Their story is a reminder that love finds us when we are ready for it, sometimes in the most unexpected places. That taking a risk on connection, on vulnerability, on hope, can lead to riches beyond measure. That the words we speak matter, and honesty can open doors we thought were permanently closed. That we are never too broken to be healed by the right person's love, never too lost to find our way home. And so the legacy of Zachary and Beatrice Morrison continues, generation after generation, a testament to the power of a single moment of courage, a testament to the truth that sometimes the best thing we can do is stop running and let ourselves be found. A testament to the eternal power of love to transform, to heal, and to create something beautiful and lasting in even the roughest, wildest places. Their story ended not with fanfare but with quiet contentment, two lives well lived, two hearts that beat as one from the moment they recognized each other across a dining car until their final shared breath. And in that ending was the truest happiness. The knowledge that they had found each other, claimed each other, and built a forever that would outlast them both, echoing through time as long as their name was spoken and their story remembered.